Hi guys, and welcome back to Maltbox, the non-chill filtered whiskey blog. I'm Andy and I'm back here today with another whiskey review. And what this is the first part in a bit of a mini-series that I'm going to be doing, focusing on blended whiskey, because I think that it's not a category that gets enough love, quite frankly. There's going to be a few reviews, a few different styles. We're going to be looking at blended malts, a couple of blended scotches. We're going to be looking at one that doesn't really fit either category, technically. Ooh, very mysterious. So, what I wanted to open this up with, again, is a bit of an open discussion, if you will, be it in the comment section or social media, whatever, about your thoughts on blended whiskey. Let's get this out of the way. Blended whiskey is the best-selling type of whiskey in the world. No matter which way you look at it, Johnnie Walker Red Label is the best-selling whiskey in the world. And there's a reason for it. It's easy to drink, it's easy to produce, and it's affordable for a lot of people in a lot of countries, and that consistency can be kept across those different territories. I've got quite a bit of blended whiskey in my collection. A lot of single malt as well, don't get me wrong. The vast majority is single malt. Hands up. Probably the most of us have got single malt on the shelves. But I feel like blended whiskey kind of gets overlooked a lot of the time. I've worked festivals in the past, I've run whiskey clubs, I've done various tastings, and whenever blended whiskey gets mentioned, with a couple of exceptions, don't get me wrong, it's kind of been a bit, I don't really drink it, or it's not as good as single malt. Well, on its day, and with the right mix, it certainly can be. I mean, I've tried single malts that are absolutely abysmal compared to a 20 quid, even 10 quid bottle of supermarket own blended whiskey, for example. So, the whiskey that I'm going to be starting with today is a blended malt Scotch whiskey, and it comes courtesy of J.G. Thomson. Very, very fetching press pack that was sent to me a couple of weeks ago. So let's get this out of the way. This has been provided to me free of charge. Not at my request, it was sent, offered, and I accepted. However, just because this whiskey has been provided does not mean that it will be getting a favourable review as a result. And I like to point that out because I am conscious that a lot of people get sent a lot of stuff. And I wanted to point that out. So, I mean, past this very, very nifty little pack, I'll try and hold them up if I can. I'm only going to be looking at one of these. I've got a gin, Jamaican rum. I've got smoky, a rich, and a sweet blended malt Scotch whiskey. So there's the blended malts, and I'm going to be looking at the rich today, the one with the red bar on it. Now, a bit about J.G. Thomson. They are actually owned by the same company as the Scotch Malt Whisky Society. So this is their kind of new venture. Set up kind of a blending and separate spirit operation. Now, this is bottled at 46%. I believe it to be non-chill filtered and natural colour, but on this sample bottle it doesn't tell me. So, based in Edinburgh, in Leith, to be precise, where the Scotch Malt Whisky Vaults are now. That was where they were based originally. They're actually a really old company. I think they went back to something like the 1700s. Obviously, there was some whiskey being produced there, but they weren't necessarily a whiskey specialist back then. So, let's give it the benefit of the doubt and say it is natural colour. It's kind of a mid-range gold, kind of a copper. Bit of a lip round the glass. Now, in terms of malt components, I don't know what distilleries this has come from at all. Speyside Highland, not a Scooby-Doo. What I do know, it's a blended malt. So it's not a blended Scotch whisky, it's a blended malt Scotch whisky. So the blended malt category is malt whiskies taken from different distilleries and blended together. If you took malt whiskey from different distilleries and a grain distillery and mixed that together, that's not blended malt anymore, that's blended Scotch whisky. I will be going over these in a bit more detail with each of the different whiskies that I'll review over the coming weeks. But just to get it out of the way, blended malt. Also, you might see it on some older bottlings called vatted malt. You can't call it vatted malt anymore. The SWA, Scotch Whisky Association, decreed a few years back that you can't call it vatted malt. It's misleading. You need to call it blended malt. And that is the category name now for Scotch. So, on the nose. Quite closed initially, but admittedly I've just got it out of this sample bottle. There's a little bit of plum, peach, There's also kind of a citrusy element to it as well. A little bit of a prickle, nose prickle. We do have some black currant. It's very fruity. It is very, very fruity. We've got a bit of treacle maybe as well now. It's just on the back of my nose, it's going away. It's one of those that kind of sticks around for a little bit. I think for me, it does smell 46%. It does smell quite strong actually. If I had this blind, I probably would have put it between 46 and 50. Now I think for a full bottle, I think this retails for around 40 to 45 quid. You can find it at pretty much all the usual online suspects now. It only got released, I think, towards the end of 2021. On the palate. Well, I wasn't expecting that. It is, I mean, the title of this one's rich. The name of this one's rich, and it is very rich. Very powerful up front, in fact. For me, I'm sticking with my treacle. My black treacle runs throughout this whiskey. I've not looked for any tasting notes or anything online. To be clear, guys, like I said in another review, I think, I never pre-record these. I never do any tasting notes. I never write any down, and I very rarely taste the whiskey beforehand, unless basically a lot of them I just pick off the shelf that are already open, or I open them for you. I never rehearse this sort of stuff. So my notes are always going to be probably more subjective than maybe other reviewers that may practice or write notes, and that's fine. That's the way they do it. I kind of have to take it off the hop on first impressions a lot of the time. And this is very, very rich. The finish, incredibly long. It's very, very warm. It's still there, right in the bottom of my throat, with ginger, some biscuity element as well. Texture. It has got a good mouthfeel. I think there's a lot of toffee in there, which kind of plays a parallel to that treacle. Nutty. The fruit comes back, but we're looking at desiccated fruit, dried fruits, we're looking at dates, we're looking at prunes, we're looking at some atypical Christmas cakey notes, but it's a lot more savoury for me, because then it turns and you get this kind of smoked charred meatiness. I'm not saying it's a smoky whiskey, it's not, for me at least. I don't know if it's peated or unpeated, to be honest. I believe it's unpeated, to be fair. But there is that kind of barbecuey meat element going on right at the back. Like a smoked brisket, burnt ends kind of thing, which you tend to find with peated whiskey. You find it on a lot of Islay whiskies or Highland peated whiskies, for example. It's a very, very interesting whiskey, to be fair. It is. And I mean, what I'd say, it's good to have a bit of variety in the market again, a new player in the blended category. I mean, Compass Box are up there with one of the synonymous go-to guys when it comes to blended whiskey. And it's nice to have an alternative, you could argue. I mean, the reason that I didn't pick a Compass Box for this mini-series, spoiler alert, there isn't any. I've already reviewed a lot of them in the past on the channel. I mean, Orchard House made my Whiskey of the Year, for example, so I'm not going to go back and cover that again. Now, what I'm going to do, because I feel like I've got a little bit of time, is I'm going to cover another one. So I'm going to go for their sweet now. I mean, you could argue I should have done it the other way around, but such is life. We all make mistakes. For all I know, this could work splendidly. So, again, I'm just going to do another half bottle. So, roughly 2.5 centilitres, so standard English and Welsh pour, because in Scotland standard measures 30 ml. A little bit lighter, and you can probably already see in the bottle, I mean, I got a little bit more out of that one, but some left in the glass. You're already looking at a much lighter whiskey. And again, this is another blended malt, and again, it is bottled at 46%, and I will give it the benefit of the doubt of being chill filtered and natural colour. It may well say that on the full size bottles, but on the miniatures it does not. And I'm smiling because just as I drank my water, I could hear my Labrador Sky running around with a favourite squeaky toy. So if you did hear any random squeaks, apologies. She's having a good time. So again, a nice rim around the glass. In terms of colour, it is paler, yeah. We're looking at a more golden colour as opposed to the copper of the previous bottle that I looked at. On the nose. Oh, okay. I like this comparison thing. Yeah, these are very different beasts. Whereas the rich, I'm doing that because I'm trying to differentiate them between the two and I'm trying to remember, is a lot more spicy. It's a lot more kind of fruit forward. This one, the sweet, is more honey driven. It's a little bit floral. There is something in the back there as well that is a little bit fruity, and maybe some of the ginger that I mentioned from the finish of the previous ones come through to the nose on this. Bit of vanilla. Some slowish legs going down the glass on the palate. Texture's a little bit thinner than the rich. Palate wise, it is lighter. It is sweeter in the sense that it stays that way. So I think up front, the previous blending malt, the rich that I reviewed or looked at, was a little bit of a dram of two halves on the palate. It started off very intense, very sweet, very rich in that sense, but then it became, like I said a minute ago, very meaty, very savoury. This carries through a lot of honey, a lot of vanilla, a lot of brown sugar throughout. The finish isn't quite as long either as the rich. It's probably more medium length, and it is on the lighter side. It is more floral, honey, kind of digestive biscuit, maybe hobnob. If you get those outside of the UK, I really hope you do, because in my opinion, a hobnob is the best biscuit. And don't come out with chocolate hobnobs. You just need a good old classic hobnob. They are, side by side, very, very different. I wonder if they do have some similar components within them. Because there are times when they kind of cross over a little bit. Yeah, that is definitely a lot more floral and a lot more honey-led. Maybe a bit of marmalade. Buttery, very, very buttery, in fact. Very buttery. A little bit salinity, perhaps, as well. A little bit salty on the palate. I think out of the two of them, I'm a little bit torn because they've kind of both got their own positives. I normally go for a lighter style of whiskey, to be honest with you. That's why I like a lot of ex-bourbon cask. However, in this instance, I think I'm probably leaning towards the rich because I like that savoury note on the back of the palate. And I believe, I mean, just to reiterate, these two should retail for around 40 to 45 quid. Very, very solid, very, very good, approachable, good introductions to the category, I think. And they do provide something different. There is a smoky one in there that I'm not going to look at yet, so I might split that out and put that on the Instagram actually, to provide a little bit of a dimension cross-platform. But both of these are batch one, so it's clearly batch releases. So they're going to be small batches. Yeah, really, really good to have another player in the market of blended whiskey that's going to hopefully use those same sort of like distribution channels of the Scotch Malt Whisky Society to sort of push the category in general, which would be great. So guys, on that note, I'm going to box it off. Thanks so much for watching. Thank you to all my patrons for your support. Thank you to all of you subscribers. If you've not yet subscribed, feel free to do so. You're under no pressure or obligation to do so either. Feel free if you want to. I'm on Instagram at maltboxwhiskey. I've also got the website over at maltboxwhiskey.com. Thanks for watching. See you soon.